Hello? Who's ever out there? Hi. How's it going? I'm going to wait for a few more people to show up, and then I'm going to start talking. But whoever you are, hello. Don't be afraid to introduce yourself. Tell me who's out here. I'm going to pull this thing a little closer to me. There we go. Hey, all. You can hear me okay, I'm assuming? Somebody give me a thumbs up. Give me a little something. Let me know you can hear me okay. There we go. Jeff. How are you? How are ya? All right. I'll give it another minute or two, and I'm just going to start yapping. I'm going to talk about studio versus live playing today and how I approach it. And if you have questions about that, you can hit me. But if you have recording questions that you want to with right away, feel free to do that. Hey, all. Anybody chiming in? Hi. All right. We got 5 people. Maybe I'll wait for one more and I'll start talking. Feel free to say hi. You guys can hear me okay, right? Seems like it. I'm guessing we're okay. You would say if you couldn't, right? All right. I'm going to start talking. It's talking about studio versus live. Somebody had asked me this kind of in a live stream a couple of weeks ago, and I thought maybe I'd go a little more in depth with it. Hello, Mark. How are you? Thanks for showing up, dude. Okay. How do I think of live playing versus... Hello? Drum and dummies. Dumb and dummies. Dumb and drummies. I like it. Okay, how do I approach live playing versus studio playing? Okay, and I'm going to talk in like a touring context here, obviously, because, we could talk about, whether you're playing like at a restaurant or a mall, but I'm going to talk about as if I'm on tour, playing in like a theater or a shed or like a bigger space, as opposed to playing in a studio. And I would say, in general, I try not to think of it that much differently anymore. I used to when I was younger. I used to think, I'm going to play a lot louder, fill up the space. But the more I got to understand kind of the audio aspect of things, the engineering aspect of it, that definitely changed my approach to how I hit the drums live in a concert. So I would say, let's say my studio influence definitely my studio playing definitely started to influence my live playing, in terms of just trying to get the same balance, really trying to think about kick and snare volume over cymbal volume. If anybody knows my playing from like the early 2000s when I was touring with Alanis Morissette, I was playing really hard, bashing the cymbals. Like over my head, coming down. And I think it was great in a certain way for that. But I definitely got complaints from the front of house guy and the monitor guy and how, my cymbals were in everybody's mics. And at the time I didn't give a shit. I just wanted to do it, but now, I wouldn't really do that now. I would think about the overall context and what's coming in front of house and helping the front of house engineer deal with those things. And I've definitely experimented with having, like big wide open drums. Like at one point I took an 18-inch bass drum with no dampening in it on tour. And I got to say the front of house guys hated it because, it was wide open, and as many of you may know, like the an 18 wide open can have a massive sound, right? Like crazy, just. And then when you put it in a bigger space through a PA system, it's like almost impossible to control, right? Because you're going to get ambience from your bass drum, even if it's super dead in a big space, right? You're going to have reverb in a hall. So to have something that with no dampening and then the head rings a lot and then that low end is really hard for them to control. So now I will take that into context. And I started to learn that, in those types of situations where it's important to work with your front of house guys. Another thing I can think of is I typically, I like lower snares. Well, I'll take probably 2 or 3 snares on tour. One might be a backup, but then I like to have a high and a low, and I switch them out depending on, the tunes. And but one thing I liked it, I remember a front of house guy approaching me on a certain tour when we were in rehearsals, and he's like, "Hey man, can you just tune that snare up more? Like I really need more crack and I need more presence. It's sounding a little mushy." And I was like, "Great, cool. I'll go with you because, this is the guy that's hearing it from the front. He's trying to separate frequencies. He's trying to make it like, pop for the audience. And I have no perspective on that from where I'm sitting. I'm going off my monitor mix. I'm like, oh, that sounds cool here. But this guy's dealing with a whole different world out front, right? And that's really the most important thing, the audience out there and how they're hearing it. So if anybody has questions about this, just chime in. It can be off subject too, but if you have questions about it, chime in. But definitely, I'd probably play a little harder live just for excitement, try to be a little more flaily, not chopsy, but like visual, I would say. Because that's exciting. People want to see a drummer that's visual, right? And like the guy from Striper. Anybody know Striper? 80s metal band, Striper, the visual timekeeper. Anyone? No. This is like trying to do comedy in a vacuum. All right. So yeah, maybe play a little more, but definitely I'm, very conscious of my cymbal volume and, just how my sounds are perceived out front. Questions? Anybody? I'm waiting. Happy to answer questions. I will keep talking about this. There we go. I see a question. Hello, Billy. How much do I charge for consulting? If you can hit me in an email, that would be great. Go to my website and hit me up with a lesson thing. I try not to talk about like monetary things, like out in the public on YouTube, because sometimes things change. And it's not that I'm on a sliding scale or anything like that, but this could be years old and I'm talking about certain things. So Billy, please email me at my website. Just go to the lesson thing. There's like a little form to fill out, and I would love to give you a little feedback on your track if you want. Is that cool? Let me know. I do this with people. Mark, who's a Patreon member of mine, I think we've done this, and I do this for people, and I can make you a video lesson or get on with you in person and do it through Zoom where we're listening to audio. Is that cool, Billy? Let me know. Okay. Questions? Cool. Thank you, man. Right on. Anybody want me to keep going with the studio versus live thing? Is this interesting? We all good? I love feedback. Feedback is good for me on this end. I'm in a vacuum. Okay, what else? Different snares. I definitely, when I'm preparing for a tour, I definitely listen to songs and I try to think about sonically how to best represent a song, even though, right on. I try to how I represent the song, and obviously, I would sometimes, I've gone nuts where I try to change ride cymbals and stuff, but I also realized that was kind of ridiculous in a bigger setting. But I'd take a snare up, the pitch of a snare can really change the perception of a song. Ballad versus something that's fast, having a different snare sound, and again, the audience may not be aware, but for me as a player, trying to play something faster on a super soggy snare is not fun, not easy. Um, and I also I often have like even changing snares in between. Okay. Cool. Thanks, Mark. Also have to have like even another side snare where, so there's a high and or low snare in the main position, but then a side where if there's a verse, something that needs a different sonic palette to have that. And in let's see, in 2014 when I was touring with Melissa Etheridge, the last tour I did with her, I was putting different things on top of that drum. Sometimes jingles, sometimes my old goat toenails here, and just trying to get different tones for the audience, just to represent, some vibes from the record. Okay, the one lug thing, I think it's a very viable method, but I don't do that. I just assume have a different drum that's really specialized for that sound. I try to take drums out that are the same depth. So if my main snare is a 6.5, I'll have one that's a 6.5 that I crank up, and then I'll have a 6.5 that's tuned low. So I don't have to mess with the snare stand height. But the one lug thing, I've heard it and it definitely works. The other thing, of course, is the big fat snare drum thing, which totally works. But I don't know. It's just never been my thing. I'd rather have two drums, and switch them out. It's very easy to do. That's just my opinion. Jeff, when do you send stems to a client producer? Do you them raw or flat? Do you taste first? Okay, Jeff, I do either. I asked the engineer producer what they would like. Sometimes the answer is they want both, and I'll end up sending the raw files, and then I'll end up sending my version of the processing, EQ and compression. Really depends on the client, depends on who's going to be mixing. Definitely depends on, I would say most people want it how I've heard it in the studio, because I'm sending them an MP3, like, hey, is this cool? Are we signing off before we sign off? They're like, yeah, that sounds great. So they don't want to get something that sounds different. And usually it's not going to be that drastically different, but they want it to sound how they've heard it, and I'm 9 times out of 10, I'm not so extreme that they can't dial things back or forth with their own mix. And what else was I going to say? I'm totally blanking. Yeah, they can dial things forward or back with their own mix. But yeah, they want a representation of what they've heard from me. And I feel pretty confident in my drum mixes. And I also, I've developed ways to send them options, inside there, separate effects sends and things like that, where they're not totally stuck with, everything. They have an option to, like, oh, you know what? I don't want that. Mute. It's gone. Problem solved. If you guys want to hit the tip super chat things at the bottom and leave me coffee money for answering questions, I love that. At the end of these, I have a little bit of bread from my time, and I could buy a bag of chips and a thing of tea. So, Mark. Do I prefer my in-ear monitors in a studio setting? That's a really good question. I am I'm a headphone guy. Couple reasons. First of all, I love these headphones. These are Ultraphones. You ever seen these? I like these for a couple of reasons. They have a little less high end on them, so they're not great for like mixing or something. But if I'm tracking in a studio, I actually carry these to other studios too. I make sure I always have these headphones. They have a little less high end on them, so if I'm tracking something all day long, like 4 or 5 tunes with somebody, this is less ear fatigue with high end without having to mix it. Great isolation. Thank you. Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate that, man. It's great isolation from the drums. So I'm not fighting my cymbals if it's coming off. And there's nice low end in here too. Okay. These to me are also, especially if I'm working all day long, way more comfortable to me than in-ear monitors, because my in-ears, although they fit good, I in general I find them uncomfortable. You know, they put them in. After a while, your ears get tired of having them in there, pulling them in and out. Like I walk back and forth to my control room a lot, so I just want to be able to pull these off and set them down without having to like shove these things in my ear. And then the last reason is the in-ears tend to be way more hot than headphones, I found. And I'm nervous about, even though, you know, if I'm in here, but if I go somewhere else, I'm nervous about getting blown out by somebody, especially if I don't have my own box. I don't want to get slammed. It's happened to me before, you know, obviously feedback and live settings on a stage, or somebody accidentally starts Pro Tools without meaning to, or, you know, whatever. And you've got your ears halfway in and you haven't checked your volume, and bam, you get nailed. And I want to avoid that at all costs. And so these are like not as loud. So helpful. Ultraphones. I need an endorsement. Hi, John. Oh, we got a lot of questions. All right, sweet. Do you use gates in a breathable way? Yes. Well, in a breathable way. Sure. I think about compression is more breathable, but I think I know what you mean, where it's maybe working as compression. Is that what we're talking about, Billy? Yes. And I will do that. Some of these things on YouTube I have up, like the hip hop videos, you'll see where I use it as like an effect where it's coming on and off, where you're hearing like bottom snare things come on and off, and it affects the tone of the kit and the beat happening. So I do use gates that way. John Wells, what's up, dude? Have you ever tried luck or using stereo omnis as overheads? Ooh. Stereo omnis as overheads? No. Mainly because I don't own any. So wait, you're talking about one, you know, like a C24, right, John? C24 as an overhead. I've never tried it. I think I've done it with Zach Ray. But that would have been a long time ago. And frankly, I don't know if I remember the results. So I guess the short answer is, John, no, haven't really tried it, but especially with a good mic, I'm sure it'd be great. Your drum sound. Hi, Blair. When recording, do you try to hit the cymbals softly to avoid them? I do. And in fact, I put up a video last week about this. Yes, internal balance in the studio is incredibly important, especially, you know, with pop music, you know, R&B, hip hop, rock. Kick and snare need to be the volume, the center of your sound, right? And, you know, emphasizing the hi-hat, you know, too much doesn't make any sense. You know, we wouldn't play a beat, like we wouldn't want to record you know, everything has an exception. I always have to say that so I don't get slammed. Everything has an exception, but you don't want to play a rock beat like this. Sorry. I just can't do it backwards. Right? That sounds like shit. You don't want to do that. So that's an extreme example. But yes, internal balance is incredibly important. It helps with bleed in the mics, your room sound, which hopefully is very natural. You're not having to like try to tone down those cymbal sounds with EQ. Really good. But go check out that video I put up last week. Of course, I'm available for private lessons if you want to work on internal balance at all. Athon. Hi, Blair. I was wondering how you'd pick the middle ground kit for a live show. If there are tons of different drum sounds, which right? Okay, right. Okay, how do you decide on an all-in-one kit for a live show? Really good question. 2 separate Omnis, John. Okay, I'll get to that in a second. I haven't tried it, but I love that idea. One all-in-one live. Okay, so this is the way I approach it. When I first was hired by Melissa Etheridge in 2010, I was given her catalog of recordings to learn. Okay, so her first record came out in 1988. Okay, and then the record I was starting to tour on came out in 2010. So you can imagine the production differences over 22 years, right? 80s production, 90s production with loops, early 2000s production with, super organic sounds. And obviously you can't cover them all, right? You can't cover them all. But I think the best thing to do is learn the tones and then try to emulate enough by being able to make minor changes between songs to help get in the vibe. Okay. So if you have a wide open snare for one tune, then obviously simple things like, a way to dampen your snare or something heavier to make it really dead. You could do the same with toms. Again, changing snares can be helpful. A side snare, I was talking about this a little bit earlier, a side snare where you can put different things on it. Like if you need to like kind of emulate a program sound or something, experiment with different sounds you can lay on top of the snare. Kick, I have definitely toured with 2 different bass drums. A bigger one and a smaller one, and try to emulate those sounds. I have found it's not quite as effective. It's hard. It's not. I mean, ideally, I have 2 separate kits, right? If that's possible. Not always possible for the size of production going live, but I think 2 separate kits can be super helpful if you can do that. But otherwise, I guess the short answer is find a middle ground, find what works for most tunes, like this is going to work for 75% of it, and then make little changes. To try to help the vibe. Things like that. Percussion helps too. Percussion can play a big part in changing the vibe of something. Especially maybe if something's programmed. Just think about creative ways to kind of recreate those things. Is that helpful? Hey y'all, I'm taking tips for coffee money and stuff. If anybody wants to hit me up for help me out, the super chat things are at the bottom there. And okay, right on, cool. And that's always awesome for spending some time answering some questions. Okay, Billy, yes, that's absolutely what I'd like to do. I use the Sennheiser 280 Pro headphones, and they are awesome because I can hear the tone of the drums. Right, Sennheiser, yeah. I have some biodynamic headphones that are really nice too, but I like the isolation of these Ultraphones a lot. John, 2 separate Omni. Man, when COVID's done, let's do it. Come over. Like seriously, that sounds like a cool thing. Yeah. How do you deal with the difference in acoustics of venues? Right. Like a large venue with a long reverb and bright sound, and a small pub with dark sound and a short reverb time. Do you play in tune different? Okay. Do I tune different? Probably not. Well, I guess we're talking about different gigs, right? We're not talking about doing the same gig in like such drastically different venues. Right. Dumb and drummies, right? Can I get a consensus on that? We're talking about different types, like playing different gigs around town and or amphitheaters, things like that. Or are we talking about doing the same gig? Right. We're different gigs. Okay. So yeah. I mean, the big reverbs and the big places, you can't, you got to do what you got to talk to the house engineer, see if you can help them out. I have said this before, but I did a Melissa Etheridge tour where I used concert toms. It was actually my DW drums here, but I actually took the bottom heads off, or I cut out the bottom heads, but so they were concert toms and I put pinstripes on them. And because of the particular record, I thought it would sound cool. And the front of house guy loved it because they were just dead and he could just treat them the way he needed to in bigger spaces. The tech side of it was crazy and they thought they sounded like shit, but I didn't really care. I thought they sounded cool. But he loved that. So how do I deal with that? I try to talk with a front of house engineer, like daily, different gigs, things like that. Hey, is there anything I can do to help you out? I always make friends with the front of house guy to see if we can, because you want to work with them. And then on smaller gigs, I definitely will choose my drums for the gig. Like 2 weeks ago, I actually played like an outdoor mall gig, mask, whole bit. And it was like a little jazz trio, organ trio types of things. And I took darker cymbals and I made sure to take a snare that was on the darker side, and not loud and cracky, because I didn't want to overtake anything. I wanted to, take drums that were, volume appropriate. I wouldn't take my big Phil Collins concert toms because that would just be loud and annoying. So is that a helpful answer to you? Wow, it has been a long time since the Etheridge gig, yes. Yes, it has. 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I started that gig. Thank you, John. Appreciate that. Okay, more questions. Y'all, 16 people. I need some more questions. Happy to help. Yep. Thank you for the tip. Appreciate it. Okay, good. All right. We're moving along here. Appreciate that. What else we got? Live versus I can stick on the topic of live versus studio. What else? Oh yeah, another thing that I've been doing live lately. Hang on, I'll be right back. I'm gonna grab something. All right, so these, I have a video on these. I have like 3 of these. These are these little custom snares I had made by DW. And no, you can't get them. I'm sorry. Not to be mean, but they're like, don't ask. Is lately, especially on like local gigs, I'll take one of these. So if my snare sound, let me move this rack tom so you guys can see. If I just have a, pretty straight up snare sound for, right? Straight ahead. When my friend Jonah Smith, who's a great songwriter, we play around town. Sometimes it's a duo, and sometimes we'll do. He has some kind of R&B stuff, and I'll bring this 2x10" snare, and I'll just set it right here. And this is kind of a cool option. This one's not tuned quite as high. There you go. And I'll just set this on here, and sometimes we'll do like a kind of a hip hoppy tune or something, and I'll just pull this up, and it just helps change the whole vibe in a live setting. So a very simple change, as opposed to this. Right, that's a pretty effective vibe change. And obviously this is very light to carry around, so it's not like a whole lot of gear. So something like a in a small setting, something easy to carry like this can be fun on a gig. And then everybody in the band notices the vibe change too. And it can be a nice change. Mark, do you ever export individual drum tracks for clients? What level do you send it at? Okay, seems like -6 dB might be the average, but I'm still turned around on that. Okay, Mark, this is what I do. First of all, when I mix my drums, I make sure that my loudest level is at unity. So like, if the kick and snare, let's say the kick and snare are mixed, at the same volume, like let's say inside kick and snare top are at unity, and other things are like worked around that. I never go above unity first. So everything mix wise is tucked in below that appropriately. And then I did start to like, when I send something out to clients, they're like, yes, I like that. We're done. Please send me the stems. I will then print the volumes of everything at those. So when they get the stems, let's say if the mono overhead is at -7, they're going to get the stem printed at -7. So they can put everything at unity, and it's my mix. Okay. I don't really think about -6 or whatever. And I don't put any like mastering stuff on there or anything. Like, it doesn't make any sense. I will send them a 2-track. Again, I just make sure it's not peaking, make sure it sounds good. But I don't think about it like that. I make sure, no distortion, no peaking. That's how I think about it. Does that help, Mark? What's the max dB I shoot for when tracking? I don't really think about it. I just watch the meters. Again, max. I don't I listen to it, and if something's peaking, I'll make sure it's not, but I don't think about what dB it is. Never have. Yeah. You just don't want to send something that's distorted, especially digital distortion, because that's the worst. Hello, Ronnie. What's the secret to playing in perfect time? What's the secret? Ain't no secrets. Practice. Practice with the metronome. Practice with great players that have better time than you. Yeah. No secrets. I have many methods, and I'd be happy to give you a lesson on lots of different options I've done. But practice with the metronome. Recognize your tendencies, rushing and or dragging. Do you rush a groove? Do you drag a groove? Do you rush fills? Do you drag fills? And then play with people with good time, and open your ears. there's nothing better than playing with people with good time to man, like, you know, in my college days playing with great bass players that were walking lines. I mean, just there's nothing like being like, okay, I'm not going to be the guy that drags this down or pushes ahead. Um, or a great rhythm guitar player, you know, you don't want to kill their pocket. So you hone in on that. So, you know, the secret is it takes, you know, some people are born with great time, but other people have to develop it. But a combination of all those things and just always being aware of your time. Always be aware of your time. Record yourself, you know, because sometimes you're like, I'm killing it. And then you listen back and you're like, oh, I'm not killing it. I'm killing it. You know, find out what your tendencies are and then become aware of them. So when you come to those moments, fills or whatever, you're honed in on what not to do. That help, Brony? Mark, yes, I just need to wrap my head around it a little more. Yeah, I get it, Mark. I get it. Yeah. Make sure nothing's distorting. Hey, Adam. Good advice. And thanks for the lesson last week. Yes. I gave Adam a lesson over Zoom last week. We had a good time. I gave him a lot of stuff. He's going to check back with me soon. And let me know how it's going. Everybody wants to leave me tip money. Hit the little things at the bottom for answering questions, giving out advice. Let me buy a scone at the end of the day. What else, y'all? What else? Anybody have crazy snares like this? 2x10? Anyone have something like this? I think Pearl makes something like. Somebody mentioned that there's a drum company that makes something similar to this. Everybody play that thing? Ah, thank you, Roni. Appreciate that, man. Right on. Anybody know what I'm talking about? The man, it had a name. I wish I could remember right now. But I think it was Pearl's the company that makes this. Anybody know what I'm talking about? You guys are also silent. This is sometimes it's like speaking to a classroom, and like everybody has their head on the desk or something. You can't tell. What else? Should have brought some water. John. Oh, so you know what I'm talking about, John? What is it called? No, not the Sonar Jungle. Close, because the Sonar Jungle has jingles, and those are rad and hard to find. And it is similar, but it has the jingles. But it's the same basic idea. This one obviously doesn't have any jingles. A friend of mine had a Sonar Jungle snare for a long time. It was really cool, and it got stolen. My favorite albums of all time. Wow. Okay. Well, good question. Many Rush records. Top 5 favorite drummers? Come on. I have like 1,900 of my all-time favorite drummers. All right, I'll give you a few records. I'll dive into my childhood. Okay, of all time, 5 top records. Okay, one record that actually has come back on me like pretty hard lately is Sting's "Dream of the Blue Turtles," and this record came out when I was 13 years old. You guys know this record? Omar Hakim, Sting's first solo record. Omar Hakim, Kenny Kirkland, Daryl Jones, Branford Marsalis. Amazing songs, amazing playing. And man, I spent so much time with the grooves on that record. It was such a great learning tool for me. Not only because the songs are great, but the things that Omar was playing were great for coordination. Really interactive. It's a pop record, but it definitely has like interactive musical interaction. Spent a lot of time with that. A record that comes to mind is Chick Corea's Three Quartets with Steve Gadd. I met Sting too. I actually got to play a song with him a couple times. Okay, what did I just say? Oh, Chick Corea's Three Quartets with Steve Gadd. That's one that I always go back to. Incredible record. All right, I'm going to give you one more that pops to mind. All-time favorite record. Man. How about Things Fall Apart by The Roots? That one comes to mind. I mean, it never ends. Yeah. Sorry, Ronnie. That's a hard question, man. All-time favorite drummers: Stuart Copeland, Neil Peart, Bonham, Vinny, Questlove. Who else? God, my contemporaries: Matt Chamberlain, Abe Jr. Man, I mean, Andy Newmark. I'm always on an Andy Newmark kick. You guys know Andy Newmark? Please tell me you know Andy Newmark and study him. I made 2 of those snares because of you. You made them? Great sounding because of the studio. It's super versatile. It was originally a Sauron Jungle. You made 2 of them? I want to see them. Can you post a pic? Hey, Declan. What's up, man? I want to see those drums. You had somebody make them or you made them? Can you make me another? I'm curious. Back to the headphones versus ear monitors. Do you need different mix live than you do in the studio? Okay. Yes, Mark. Different mixes. Yes. Okay. So with the live thing with in-ears, we're talking in-ears. You can kind of set it right, and hopefully you have a monitor guy that's really good. Like the last tour I did with Josh Groban, the front of the house guy, his name was Cookie. He was great, man. Like, I had click that was super important because the click on that gig with the particular tunes would slow down and speed up all the time with Josh Groban's music, and it was like crazy, like really crazy. So I had to follow it. So the click was definitely prominent. Bass is always prominent. With live, I want a really nice mix of everyone. Like I want it to sound, as much like a record, and I want to be able to hear people and be able to interact with them. Okay, it's super important to me that I'm able to interact with people playing. I don't want anybody on stage that is doing things that I have no idea what they're doing. They're looking at me and they're like, "Hey, I'm playing some great shit." And I'm like, "I don't hear you." Like, I never want that happening. In a studio, usually the click is going to be the most prominent thing, right? And then everything is going to be mixed there based on importance of getting the track nailed. Okay, so if there's a vocal, I definitely want to hear the vocal, but oftentimes it's not a final vocal. First of all, it's a demo vocal. And secondly, like timing of a singer may be a bit floaty, which is totally fine, but I don't want to be influenced by it. So I want to hear it, but I'm going to tuck it away, And then, or if there's like a kind of syncopated bass part, I want to make sure I'm locked with that. Or there's a rhythm guitar part, acoustic guitar part, I want to make sure I'm locked with those, especially if they're final, right? If they're demo stuff and I'm kind of going first, I'm going to lock to the click and I'm going to make that thing the prominent thing in my mix. I don't want to be influenced by demo guitars or demo bass that may not quite be like nailed where it should be. Okay. Drums is a classic. Yes, that's the only record Sting made with Omar. And then it was Manu Katché, and then Sting. I mean, sorry, Manu Katché and then Vinny. Jeez. Yes, but man, such a good record. Jacqueline, you know Andy. Yes. He played the Lion. He did. He played the Lion King. Wow. Yeah. If you guys don't know Andy Newmark, go Google, go YouTube. Roxy Music Avalon Tour, 1983 or 4, and you're gonna see some funky ass costumes and 80s costumes. But man, you're gonna hear some badass drumming. Woo! Go check out Andy Newmark, one of the baddest groovers ever, and just I don't know if he's as well known as he should be, but one of my favorites. Billy, do I play the same fills live all the time? Do I mix them up? I definitely mix them up. I am not a guy that I like to work on. I like to work on like inspiration in the moment. And when I say that, it's not like I'm like, one night I'm playing simple fills and the next night I'm playing choppy fills or something. But I go with what's happening in the night, and I try to go with the energy. So there may be a particular fill in a particular tune that I keep the same. Like when I was touring with Alanis, there's a tune called Ironic. I don't know how old all you guys are, but that was a huge hit back in the day. But there's this one fill, and it comes out of this breakdown section. And I would always play that the same. It would go like this: 1, 2, 3, 4. I would play that the same every night because I felt like that's what the audience wanted to hear. But otherwise, I try to go with the music. You know what I mean? And influence the music the way it needs to be. So if one night it's a ka 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 or dugga-do, something appropriate, but I'm usually not bound to the same fill. Adam, I'm reading your question. Mono mic. Yeah, mono with okay, so I do mono. I'll show you. All right, it's not quite enough. This is my mono overhead, and then I do spaced pair normally. ORTF in mono, to me, the stereo spread is not wide enough in ORTF with the mono mic. Just my opinion. So, and again, I feel like all my answers are like this, but it depends on the song, right? Sometimes I want more of a stereo spread and more cymbals as opposed to the mono overhead, which is, I try to set right down in the middle here where it's going to pick up toms and kick and snare more, where it's enhancing the snare sound and the tom sound. And my space pair is, almost more cymbally, right? So it depends on how hard I'm hitting for the particular track, how much cymbal I need in there. Maybe the track, I don't need a stereo thing. Maybe it's like a mono type vibe, a vintagey thing, and I'll just mute the overheads. But I just mix according to like how much spread I want and then how much of that mono mic I want to help fill out the snare tone and things like that. Yeah. I feel like that's kind of like an auditory question, so it's hard to answer. It's almost easier to hear what I'm talking about than to talk about it, but that's how I think about it. Andy did slay mighty with slide. Yes. Bought jungle friend of mine who built drums and made the 2x10 shell. I've just switched the sonar shell with the jingles and the new shell. Drilled 2 holes with the butt plate, and that's it. Oh, cool. Right on. 2x10 snares. It's all the rage. It's all we're going to be hearing in like 2 years on the radio. 2x10 snares. Get them now. That's my prediction. Kind of like the 90s when everybody had the 10 by what is that? 6.5 by 10, spin doctors. That was like the sound of the late 90s. Or the mid 90s. Man, I got so tired of that sound. Okay. I'm taking final questions here. Gonna wrap up soon. Final questions. Send me some tips. Send me some coffee money so I can get a scone. Final questions? I'm gonna make funky sounds while I wait for your final questions. Final questions. Let me solve your problem before I leave. One more problem to solve. I'm here to help. Oh, you guys are going quiet on me. Going quiet on me. One more problem to solve. Do, 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 do. Criminal, ever delusioned by the industry. And how do you deal? Delusioned by the industry? Everything is awesome all the time. Of course. Yes. It is I've been doing this professionally for 25 years now. And I was hoping by the age of 47 that my life in the music industry would be easy peasy and everything would be smooth sailing, and I would just have gigs flowing, money flowing, doing my thing, all good. It's not an easy industry. The bottom fell out of it 10 years ago. Watched it happen. It's very hard. The thing that keeps me going is I love music and I love playing drums. And if I didn't love it as much as I do, because I've thought about what else could I do with my life, I would go do something else. But I love doing this, and it fuels me every day when I wake up to want to get better at what I do and make music and interact with people and teach and play on people's records and explore and be creative. So lots of delusion. Yes. A lot of it sucks, but that's the thing that fuels me. Oh, you can send a tip, Billy. At the bottom, there's these things. There's like a super chat thing where you can, if you have your YouTube set up, you could do that. Or you could PayPal me at blair@sticksandwires.com if you wanted to send a little tip. But the thing at the bottom, the smiley face or the little number sign under the chat, those are called super chats, and you can send a little tip. Okay, one more question. One more. I will wait for one more question. We got 13 of you left. Or you can put a question in. If you want me to maybe cover something in a video, I'd be happy to do that, or talk about it more next time. I'm doing these weekly or bi-weekly. What I'm trying to do right now is put a video out at least once a week, if not every 2 weeks, and then do a live chat once or every other week. So I'm trying to be on YouTube weekly, just so you guys know. What I've been most excited about lately? What have I been? A vaccine to stop the fucking pandemic. I think you mean musically. What have I been most excited about lately? Good question. That's kind of a hard question because I'm so all over the place with what I'm doing kind of weekly. Um, to be really honest, I'm more exciting about teaching lately. And that's because, I grew up in a family of music educators. And then for a long time, I just wanted to have nothing to do with music education and just, ran from it. But, I'm now excited to like give back. So, I mean, maybe that sounds like a cheesy ass answer, but I'm sorry about that. But it's true. Trying to give out good information to people. You know, I feel like there's a lot of good information out there, but it's also hard to find good information. There's all kinds of information, but I'm trying to give out like good musical information and stuff like that. So, yeah, that's sorry if that's a cheesy answer, but that's kind of what I'm most excited about. As far as like a music, let's see. Okay, okay, I was on this kick a few months ago. I'm not as much on it right now because I get pulled in other directions. But one thing was like these Photech records from the late '90s. Photech. I'll write it in the chat. I'm going to move up front here. Hang on. Hey there. Photech. All right. So these jungle drum records and just practicing along with that stuff. That's really fun to me. Check out Photech. Those are fun. Favorite Jim Keltner tracks. Okay, Mark, there is this record I found. Jim Oblon. Sunset. Check out that whole record. It's Jim, who's an amazing guitar player, singer, songwriter. He also plays drums with Paul Simon. He's a total beast. But it's Jim Oblon, Jim Keltner, and Larry Goldings. And that whole record is just awesome songs. And Keltner sounds amazing. Larry Golding sounds amazing. And it's a super, super cool record. Yeah. All right, y'all. I'm going to sign off. Thank you all for coming on here. Hopefully it was helpful and informative. And yeah, that's it. One last time, you can leave, there's a little super chat thing right at the bottom if you want to leave a little tip. But I'm going to sign off and yeah, that's it. Thanks, y'all. I'll see you soon. Have a great weekend. Hopefully it's not too cold where you are, but it probably is. And that's it. All right, y'all. Take care.